Hello, my name is Fergus McCormick. I'm Senior Architect for the Mallow and Killarney National Monument Districts and work for the Office of Public Works in Ireland. My presentation today is on the effects of climate change on coastal heritage sites located on the southwest coast of Ireland. I'll be dealing with three sites. The first is Doonbeg Promontory Fort, the second is Ballinskellig's Priory, and the third is Skellig Michael World Heritage Site. All are located on the southwest coast of Ireland in County Kerry. We'll start with Doonbeg Promontory Fort. This is an iconic National Monument site which is heavily visited by tourists on the Wild Atlantic Way. The site is very exposed and located on the coastline and subject to coastal erosion. In 2017, there were very bad storms in December, and then in January, following further storms, there was a very large cliff collapse, which meant that the site had to be closed by the OPW. These shots show the site following the collapse. The site has endured coastal erosion for many decades, and in 1977 the decision was made by the Department of Culture and Heritage to carry out a full archaeological excavation, so it is very well recorded archaeologically. The entrance to the fort is a very distinctive feature, but unfortunately that is now being completely lost. In 2019, the entrance passage lintel was hanging precariously over the cliff edge. There's also been flood damage to the access path in 2019. This is caused from a drain which drains the mountain behind the site. This has made the site inaccessible and also caused extensive flood damage on the site itself. OPW installed sandbags to try and deflect the rainwater flooding back into the drain. This shot shows the site before any works were carried out, and you can see the perimeter fence around the site. OPW has carried out the following works in the last 2 years. First of all, we installed a perimeter fence 1.8 meters high to keep the visitors out of the site. Then we constructed a drainage wall to deflect any flood water back into the drain. And thirdly, we constructed a pathway down into the site with a 1.2 meter high fence, which gives visitors safe access down into the site and away from the danger cliff area. This shot shows the installation of the safety fencing to the site boundary. The following shots show the construction of the drainage wall on site and the repairs to the drains on site. We also repaired the access path. During this period, we removed the existing stone lintel, which was about to be lost, and we will display this prominently elsewhere on the site. OPW has put huge resources into this project, and here's a photograph showing some of the workers involved in the works. OPW also, as part of the consent process, commissioned Lardon consultant archaeologist to carry out an archaeological excavation on the last piece of the site which had not been excavated. These shots now show the safe visitor access down into the site, which allows the public to enjoy this very important national monument in Kerry. Cliff erosion is continuing, and this national monument site will eventually be lost to the elements. This shot shows the cliff line in 1898, and the blue line shows the cliff line in 2018, showing the extensive amount of historic fabric which has already been lost. Discovery programme were commissioned by OPW to carry out drone digital surveys of the site, and we have it well recorded. So now we have to manage a managed retreat from the site, but it will be lost eventually to the elements. The second site I wish to deal with is Ballinskellig's Priory, which is a beautiful site located on Ballinskellig's Bay. This site was inhabited by the monks who came off Skellig Michael in the 13th century. So it's an important archaeological and historical site. It's also located on the wild Atlantic Way and has many visitors. A large portion of this site has already been lost to climate change and to coastal erosion. And these shots show the large retaining wall and seawall which was constructed by the local authority to try and stop the erosion in this area. These historic photographs from 1932 show that there was an original stone seawall constructed, but that this was badly damaged by the water and then was replaced in the 1950s by the concrete seawall that's on site at the moment. This seawall is suffering damage from storms and storm surges and needs urgent repair. Water from storm surges overtops and waves overtop the seawall and cause damage to the site, throwing large boulders and stones onto the site, upturning gravestones and damaging the historic fabric. OPW has carried out extensive repairs to the historic fabric over the last 2 years. These include repointing works, grouting of the walls and wall top repairs, and also extensive works in the cloister area, including conservation and re-roofing of a section of the cloister that remains. This photograph shows the cloister repair works. In July 2019, Adapt Northern Heritage held their workshop in Ballinskelligs, and this dealt with coastal erosion affecting Ballinskelligs Castle and Ballinskelligs Priory. The workshop was very well attended and was very important for this project. As a result of the workshop, OPW have commissioned Carrig Conservation to carry out a climate change risk assessment on the site, and the first site visit for this risk assessment was carried out in February 2020. It is hoped that Carrig will issue their risk assessment in the following weeks. The last project I want to deal with is Skellig Michael World Heritage Site. This island was made designated a World Heritage Site in 1995 and contains very important monastic remains from the 9th century. The monastic remains show dry walling construction of beehive huts, which are unique construction and of universal value. The monastery is located high above the sea, and on the south peak you have other archaeological remains. The monastery is accessed via steps which were constructed by the monks. It's a beautiful spot and has its own microclimate, and the monks grew vegetables and had a garden on the site and also a graveyard, as well as living quarters and an oratory and a chapel. The landing pier is located down at the island and was constructed by the lighthouse keepers who came to the island in the 19th century, and further repairs were carried out in the 1960s. The oratory terrace is a fantastic piece of archaeology which has been preserved by the OPW over the last 20 years. It can only be accessed by qualified people such as OPW or academics and is not open to the public. Access to the island is mainly by boat, and this shot shows the boat arriving into the landing pier. Access is also by helicopter, but this is not very rarely used nowadays, as it is very expensive. This shot shows the landing of the pier of visitors. Visitors are allowed on the island from May to September each year. Approximately 160 visitors are allowed to visit the island each day. Climate change has affected access to the island, with storm surges and rough seas. The amount of days visitors can visit the island has been declining. As Skellig Michael is a very dangerous site for visitors and for OPW workers to work on, we carried out rescue exercises with the emergency services. This shows the lifeboat arriving at the pier in June 2019. We carried out a rescue exercise where a dummy on a stretcher was brought from the pier onto the boat. The monastery is the main feature on the island and main archaeological interest for visitors. When visitors come to the island, they ascend the steps and are given a lecture by OPW guides. There is risk of wall collapse on the island, especially in the monastery. We have a record of a collapse in the 19th century of one of the terraces on the monastery near St. Michael's Church. This shot shows the existing wall, which will now have to be taken down and rebuilt stone by stone. The Discovery Programme are monitoring the movement in this wall. There are 600 steps up to the monastery, and each one must be assessed by the OPW before visitors are permitted on the island and any maintenance works are carried out. A rescue exercise in June 2019 was carried out by Kerry Mountain Rescue and by the Kerry Coast Guard, and it involved bringing a stretcher from the monastery all the way down the 600 steps down to the landing pier. The OPW crew on the island is about 6 or 7, and they stay on the island for the duration of the works coming off at weekends. They also get extensive rescue training before they go out to the island. The OPW workers are accommodated in huts on the island, as are the guides. These huts are quite vulnerable, and in 2017 there was a major rockfall on the island, but luckily nobody was on the island at the time and nobody was hurt. But this shows the effects of climate change on the island in terms of precipitation. OPW is working on the Upper Lighthouse Road, which was abandoned by the Irish Lights in the 1870s. We're removing all the debris and we're repairing the sea walls. These series of photographs show the repairs which are ongoing at the moment. This section of the wall here was completely lost and is now being rebuilt. Eventually, tourists will be allowed access this section of the island. There are 2 lighthouses on the island. The lower lighthouse is still active but unmanned. OPW is hoping to refurbish this lighthouse in the next few years and put in accommodation for OPW workers. These are historic photographs of the lighthouse. OPW began last year carrying out the internal stripping out works to the lighthouse and will continue these works again this year. And these shots are of the internal areas. The upper lighthouse was constructed in the 1820s at the same time as the lower lighthouse, but came into disuse in the 1870s and was abandoned. It is in very poor structural condition, and the external seawall is falling into the sea. OPW has commenced repairs on this section of the lighthouse and will continue to do so in the coming years. OPW intends to repair the lighthouse and the lighthouse keepers' buildings and houses. But our first task is to repair the seawall, which is very badly damaged and is falling into the sea. We have carried out emergency repairs to lintels within the buildings. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.